So we are going to try to use library called Pandas. And you don't need to follow this code at the moment. I'm going to go through this entire lecture for about 20 minutes, and I will provide you enough time, probably more than 20 minutes, to make sure that every one of you can follow the code and understand what is happening in this code. Okay, first of all, we need to define, we need to connect our drive to this collab. So from google.collab import drive. This line of code literally import a library called drive here. But this drive, library called drive or class called drive, exists in Google Colab class. How do I know? Literally, there is no way that I can know this before I read this manual or ask ChatGPT. But this is what I know. Google Drive has a structure of this structure. This is very basic structure of Google Drive. What you are doing is we are mounting the drive, Google Drive, to this Colab so that we can access to the folder system. If we see this folder system, there is no connected run at the moment. There's no runtime running, but there is no Google Drive here. But if we run this, always it takes a little time. But now we have a folder called directory or folder called drive. That is your own Google Drive folder. Now we can have we can see the files of my Google Drive. My Google Drive has Colab code and Colab notebook and all the variables and meeting record, which is happening at the moment, and then other data sets in Zotero and etc. and etc. Let's go into the next line. Then we will import pandas as PD. During the last lecture, Uni explains what Pandas does. Pandas is a library that you can use. You can actually deal with different type of data sets, sometimes wide data set or sometimes long data set. And there are lots of methods that you can use it quite easily rather than using list, because it's much more user-friendly. So we are going to import this Pandas library as PD. So without all this kind of library, there are a lot of libraries, more than 1,000 libraries. I'm pretty sure no one can know everything, but Pandas is very basic library that almost every Python users use. Pandas, NumPy, and there are a couple more, but this is a very basic one that everyone uses. If we run it, it says we successfully imported Pandas. Now we can check what Pandas has, PD. So the reason we are importing Pandas as PD to make it shorter. So when we check directory of Pandas, it shows us all the methods that you can use, lots of methods. I don't know all of them. I only use what I use. And so how do I use it when I don't know? You can just say help. Then it will explain you what you can use in Pandas, right? How to use it, and says how to use it and what to expect to get out of it, and lots of functions here. So one thing I want to check, let's say pandas pd.head. There's no pandas head. pd.melt. Sorry. Right? So help function calls help document of this method, melt method of pandas. How to use it? pd.melt and select whatever the data frame, and then select id variables and value variables as well. You will use this melt later, but this is how, just to know, you need to know how to access to the help document of each method. Easier ways you can actually ask ChatGPT and it gives you quite clear answer. However, this could be a basic thing that you need to know because ChatGPT is not always correct. Now we are going to get a can't say much because I'm writing this. So what it does is we are setting up the file path to import. We are going to import a file called carbon emissions. How to import it? We already set the path, and then we are going to import it using pandas read CSV file path. We already set up a file path here, right? And then using the file path, we are going to use pandas method called read CSV, and we will save the file to df. Usually df is a short form of data frame. Let's try to run it. There's no file, right? Why we don't have file? Because we go to here, go to notebooks, carbon emissions, content my drive, collab. I see the file. Did I make any mistake here? Sorry about this. Probably there was a typo. Let me check it. My drive, collab, notebook, carbon emissions, the CSV. I cannot see a typo, but it says now seems it works. Oh, thank you, Amy. Now I just saw it. Okay. Now going to the next one. df head. This function will show you only the 5 rows of your data set. If we run it, shows what the data what the data would look like. We have columns called country, and we have column called sector, year, emissions, and population. And we have South Korea here. And we have not just South Korea, we have about 10 different countries in this data set. Okay, we just checked it. Why do we want to check it? Because we want to make sure if there's any NaN data, which is not available, or empty data, or if we have any strange string, for example, this 202.8, this should be 202.8, but if we have quotation mark around, then it becomes string. You can't use it. So we need to make sure that if data is correct, usually we use head just to preview the data. We can make sure that we already we know that there are some issues with this data. So we need to solve those problems by exploring a little more. df info. That's how it works. If we run it, we can see, yeah, seems mostly correct. We have country, which is object, data type is object, and we have sector, data type is object. Non-null count is 144, 144, and 144, and emissions, which is float, but non-null count is 116, means we have 28 null values. In this population, we have 129 non-nulls, which means we have 15 null values, which we need to deal with it. Okay, then let's see how this data might look like statistically. That's a method that we can use, describe. If we run it, shows, okay, emission count, we have count, mean value, standard deviation, and minimum 25. So first quarter and median and third quarter and maximum values of year. So definitely we have 144 and we have emissions and we have population. It doesn't explain you much, but sometimes this at this moment, doesn't give you much information, but sometimes this will be quite critical to understand how the data will look like, right? So far, do we have any question? Okay, no. If no, we will jump into the next one. So first, we need to remove those missing data. There are many different types of, many different ways that you can deal with missing data. You can just drop it. You can fill with 0, or you can fill with the previous value or any average value or whatever the value you like. So in this case, what we are going to do is first check is no, and we want to just check if there's any null value. So if we just run this, says false, 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 and there are some truths, but as you can see, we see only 5 rows, first 5 rows and the last 5 rows. Using this, we cannot do much. So we are going to do sum by column. Now, country has 0 non-value. Sector, year has 0 non-value. Very fortunate. But we have 28 non-values for emissions and populations for 15. To explain you this a little more, I'm going to go back. So if we run is null, this test each value and make sure that if there is null, that it returns true. If there's no null, if the value is not null, it returns false. But if you remember, during the first, probably second training, I told you true is 1 and false is 0. So you can literally sum it. If you sum them, you are only going to sum the number of truths, right? So 28 non-value, and ended up we are having 15 non-null values for population. And we are going to fit it. The easiest way is going to be drop. Is this the best way? Or if we just drop it, we don't have null value. However, we are missing some values of critical year probably. In this case, in case of South Korea, there's no agricultural value in 2020 because there was null value in 2019, we dropped the row. There is no row number 2 and number 3 and 4, right? We dropped them. Or the other way is we can fill NA with 0. If we fill it, South Korea's transportation emission in 2019 is 0. And population in 2020 is 0, which doesn't make too much sense, right? So we need to decide how to deal with it. Or the other way you can do it is DF emissions is sensitive to capital and lowercase. We need to be careful. By doing this, we can access to the required column, right? Is df dimensions field NA, and we are going to fill the NA values, so null values with its mean, something like this. Before we fill it, let's just check the number. This is what we have, its mean value. Like this, we can fill the value with each mean value. So now we don't have any null value for emission. Probably we can do the same for population as well. This is not the best way, but we are just doing it to understand the process. So we fill the value as well. POPULATION. Right. Now the CDF, there is no null value. And NIST, this is not the best way to do it, but at least we don't have a null value, so that we can actually we can now it is very ready to run the next process. There are two questions that I might need to answer at the moment. Can you show some code that you write? So what do you mean by it, Hyunwoo? Can you explain a little more for me? And
yeah, I'm just asked that, it is too fast that I can't comprehend pretty well. So
sorry about that.
no problem.
Don't worry, and I will finish this in a couple of minutes, and then we'll give you enough time to do it on your own, and then I will get all the questions during the process.
Okay, I get the point. Thank you.
And Fikri, definitely you can access to this recording on your event. What is that? Invitation, calendar invitation. We'll explain you a little more after this course. Now, after we do this, we can filter and select those whatever the required values as only the required values. So, for example, we don't have any null value, but now we want to just select country. In my case, I'm going to select country Korea. This will let me just get the data of South Korea, right? It is important to understand how to access only the values that you want. So let me explain you from the beginning. We will use data frame called DF. And how do you access it? First, get the value of the core column named country. Sorry about that. What is the value of this column of country? Is the name of all the countries, right? If we get only Korea, now we have a true and false value, right, for each row. If we put them in a data frame, it will return only those true rows, only those rows with true value. So we have the data of South Korea. If we change this Mongolia, then we will have only the value of Mongolia. This is how we access to how to filter only the required values. What if we want to access something different, be more labeled information? In this case, we use a method called ROC. I will leave this code here, and then let's go to the next line. The ROC is literally means location. Location of, let's say in this case, DF year is 2020, and its column name is emissions. Now we have all the values, all the emission values of 2020. That's how we access to the label value using the label. Transform data is using the data, we can also do the calculation. We are going to do until this page 17, the slide 17. This is probably the last one I think we can cover today. And then we will have exercise all together. And I will wait just here to get your question. You will have a lot of questions, a lot of errors and bugs today, right? Emissions per capita, let's just per cap, equals DF emissions divided by DF population. If we print data frame, if we display the data frame, now we can see a new column called emissions per capita. So what we just did is, okay, let's make emissions per capita new column named emissions per cap, and then put the value that divide emissions by population, put the value in the column. That's what we just did. So now we have a new value here. The last one you can do is, okay, then can we sort the value? Of course, can you sort the value by column name? So population can be population, and ascending or descending. There is no, you can't just say descending, but you can say ascending is false, which means descending. Sort values. Now we sorted the value by its population. Of course, this can be true as well, the other way around, right? Now I'm going to give you time for 20 minutes from slide 13 until slide 17 to go through on your own. And we'll show you the link of the file. Give me a second. I think I have the file in the week 4. Yes, we have the file in the lecture note of week 4. So use the file, copy paste to your own my drive, and you don't need to make exactly the same for the directory structure. You can just copy to your own my drive, just base directory, and then you can access to the base directory from collab. It doesn't matter, but just go through on your own. And if you have any question, please leave it as note, and then I will answer it one by one. So yes, Sammy, thank you so much for the question. If there's any space or any special character or whatsoever, then you need to deal with it. You need to remove it somehow using Python or Excel. It takes space as a character. And then what is the advantage of doing this data manipulation in Python instead of in Excel? Yeah, of course, sometimes it's much easier to do it on Excel. So I wouldn't say Python is always better, But if you have a lot of data, let's say you have 200 different types, 200 different Excel files, then you need to filter it and you need to cleanse it. Doing it on Excel takes lots of time. However, if you use Python, you can make a very simple, not very simple, you can make just one function to cover all the data cleansing jobs. So it depends on which one you would prefer. Usually when it's simpler, Excel is better. When it's more complex, then Python can be better.